what remains and what kind of diversity remains after you take away all the fear and ego from an entity.
Okay. Well, what remains is a whole lot more than you had before. It's not less. When you get rid of the fear, you get rid of all the things that are holding you back, that constrain you, that make you dysfunctional. So you become a lot more functional. You you live in a much larger reality. The more fear you have, the smaller your reality is. Think of somebody who's terribly fearful. They're afraid to go out of their house. They're afraid to, what is that? There's a name for that. Fear of the marketplace. It's a phobia of some sort. People who can't interact and function well. Okay, if you have a lot of fear, people who have anxiety attacks, that sort of thing. All that fear is constraining. It's restrictive. It keeps you from being and doing and interacting. So as you get rid of fear, your reality gets larger and larger. Your picture gets bigger and bigger. So that when you finally get rid of that fear, you live in a much larger reality with a much bigger picture. So things are more interesting, more interactive, more meaningful, more significant, less constrained than they were when you had to fear. So it goes the other way. It's not that it's, if you get rid of all your fear, you're boring. You don't have any.
Yeah, so I guess maybe a better way to phrase it, I just realized, is that what is the difference being fearless and like reckless, or shall I say? Like, can you be so fearless that you ignore every possible rule of morality somehow?
No, that's not being fearless. That's being stupid. You can be fearless without being stupid. Those two don't have to go together. It's like somebody says, well, you're standing on the edge of a cliff and somebody says, jump. And you say, no, I don't want to jump. And they say, why? Are you afraid? You say, no, I'm not stupid. That's why I don't want to jump. Not because I'm afraid. I just know that is a stupid thing to do. It's not where I'm going and what I need to do with my life. So, it's the same thing with the bears in the woods, right? So if you're not very educated about bears, then you walk out in the woods during the mating season when they're very territorial and you're liable to get hurt. But if you've done your homework and you're smarter, you know all about bears, and do you stare them in the eye or do you look down? Do you carry an air horn with you that makes a lot of noise? Do you have something that makes a big flash? What should you do? Should you turn around and run and see if you can outrun them? Well, no. But if the thing that keeps you safe is your basic intelligence and ability to think. You don't give that up because you're fearless. You don't say, oh, I'm fearless. I'll go out in the woods and, go into the grizzlies' territory and bang things together and, I'm going to have a good old time scaring the bears because I'm fearless. No, you're stupid if you do things like that. So people get that confused and they think, well, the only thing that keeps me safe is my fear. I don't go out in the woods when the grizzlies are in mating season because I'm afraid to. So it's my fear that keeps me safe. And I don't go outside when tornadoes are in the area because it's my fear that keeps me safe. And I'd say that's not true. You can have no fear at all, and that will keep you safest. Because if you don't have fear, then you won't do the things that are stupid. thing is, a
But
person,
doesn't that require you to also have knowledge? So like instead of having fear, you have knowledge that tells you, yeah, I'm not afraid of going there, but I know that it's not a good idea to go
exactly.
there, something like
And
that.
the thing is that if you are fearful, let's say you have to go in the woods because grandma's house is on the other side, you know, over the creek and what is it, through the woods and over the bridge to grandma's house. So she's sick and she calls you on the phone and she needs you to come there. So you have to go through the woods. Now, if you are fearful and you see that bear, what you're going to do is one of two things. You're going to freeze and not be able to move. That fear is going to create an odor from you that tells that bear that you're prey, you're terrified, you're frozen, or you're going to run. And if you run, you tell that bear that you're prey because that's the prey. It'll trigger its prey instinct, as well the smell of fear will trigger its prey instinct. So if you are fearful, it ends up being a great detriment. If you're not fearful, you know you have to go see grandma, well, then you take your pepper spray and your air horn and all the knowledge that you have, and you hope for the best because you have to get to grandma's house. You see any bears, you make a lot of noise. Keep them away. So you come prepared. So the point is that the fear will always be the problem. It'll always make you act in a dysfunctional way. It'll always make you act in a way that'll make things worse. Fearless gives you the maximum probability of surviving a bad situation. Okay, so that's the difference. So no, being fearless doesn't make you reckless. It's only if you're fearless and stupid do you get reckless. So if you are fearless, you're expected also to be intelligent and not do things, not drive your car at 100 miles an hour, you know, on a freeway, because that's reckless. And it's just not a smart thing to do, not because you're afraid, but because you're not stupid. So if you do have fear and you do things anyway, that will be where you'll get in trouble. That's where you'll act like prey. That's where if you're driving your car, you're afraid, but you're doing it anyway. Now somebody stops, hits the brakes in front of you, and you overreact. It's your fear that makes you overreact. If you're fearless, you don't overreact. You just deal with it in the best way you can. You may or may not survive, but you're going to try to do it right. If you're fearful, you tend to overreact, jerk the wheel, and then you flip and do all kinds of things. So keeping an awareness and a thoughtful presence will minimize the likelihood of you running into problems that you can't handle. Fear will maximize that probability. So you know, even in the martial arts, you know, they talk about the top end martial artists. You know, they have to be fearless, but they don't have to be stupid. They can be smart about what they do and who they do it with and when, and pick their times and places and that sort of thing. But you know, you always are better in a conflict of any situation if you can think and think fast and do the optimal things that you can do to survive that situation or to, you know, come out of that situation okay. Fear ruins your ability to think and to act in a clever way to deal with your fear, because fear locks your mind up. So if you're fearless, you can still think, you can still function. You still may not make it, you know, maybe the odds are just against you, but you can try your best to make it. So being fearful is never an advantage. Being fearless is always an advantage. But you also need to be intelligent enough to not throw away those advantages. So that's the way to look at that. So any situation, if you can think of any situation where you could panic in fear, or you could use your skill and your wits to deal with it, which one has the higher chance of, of a good outcome? Well, it's the one where you're fearless and have your wits and skills to deal with it. If you're fearful, you tend to lock up, you become the deer in the headlights. You just stand there and get run over. Or you do something foolish like run from the bear, who can run 10 times faster than you can. And it triggers his prey drive. That'd be the worst thing you could possibly do, but that's what fear would make you do. So anyway, yes, it's fearless is always better, but being intelligent rather than stupid is also always better. So, those two things usually tend to go together. One of the ways you become fearless is that you become knowledgeable, such that you understand, what to do, when to do it, and you do it, you take action. So that's one of the things, is you lose your fear as you become competent to deal with life.
So is that's something I was wondering about, that you basically, when you have a fear of the unknown, and then you kind of try to solve that by collecting knowledge, then you basically, I wonder if you really remove the fear instead of just removing the unknown.
Yeah, well, you probably haven't, because that doesn't give you any skills or knowledge that lets you avoid the unknown. If you're afraid of the unknown, it's still unknown. Now, if you can know something about it to where it's not unknown, and you can say, all right, I'm afraid of this or that, or there's something scary there, but now that I understand it, I can see that it's not all that scary. It can be avoided, or it can be circumvented or something, because you understand how. Then it will help. But if I'm afraid of the unknown, that an asteroid will fall out of the sky and land on me and crush me instantly, that's what I'm afraid of. Well, there's just nothing much you can do about that. Even staying inside won't help. If an asteroid lands on your house, it's going to get you just as much, or even on your office building. There isn't going to be anything you're going to do about that. So in that case, there isn't any knowledge that really helps you out or helps you get less frightened, because the knowledge doesn't help you solve the problem. But if it has to do with ability to handle the car in your automobile in a very tight situation, where you have to, maybe spin it around, or get it up on two wheels and then bring it back down again. If you have the skills to do those kinds of things, that might be really helpful, if you knew how to do those things. But if you don't, then you don't have anything to do about it. So some things you just can't help. But it depends on what your fear is. If it's a fear of death, well, that may be one of those things that you'd think you can't help, but actually you can help a lot. If you learn to meditate, you learn to go out of body, you learn to interact in that larger consciousness system, you'll lose your fear of death, because you'll see how it works. And you know that you are consciousness, and that you are immortal as consciousness, and that death is just it's part of life. It's the way it needs to be. It's a recycling. You're getting better. All those deaths gives you an opportunity to improve yourself. So it's not such a scary thing anymore. Maybe inconvenient, but not really so scary. So there's some things you can do to help that fear. Although there's nothing you can do about not dying. You will die, and that's one of the givens.
Yeah, and now that you talk about that, it seems like it kind of brings me to one of my next questions, more about cultural beliefs. And now that you were talking about that, I was wondering how much of that concept is rooted in, cultural beliefs. And for example, in particular, many cultures seem to be very particular about how they treat the dead bodies. I mean, even animals, but also humans. And then I went and asked my AI, hey, where do you think this comes from? And it said to me, oh, it's probably, religious beliefs, and maybe they have a fear of vengeful spirits. You shouldn't do this and that to the body because then, you will be cursed by the gods. And I'm like, okay, so if we take away the infection issue, then like how much of that culture is really still important after you remove the fear, remove the ego, remove the cultural dogma and everything? Like what remains then?
A lot of fear is part of our culture, indeed. Our culture is also, has a lot of fear and ego and belief tied up with it. We learn all sorts of things that are dysfunctional from our culture because our culture is simply a collective consciousness. It's a vector sum of all the consciousnesses that are part of that culture. So here we are, the average quality of consciousness is pretty low. So the vector sum of all those pretty low consciousness that make up our culture, it's going to be kind of low too. It's not going to be such a high quality. Our culture is going to have a lot of things in it that will be dysfunctional. A lot of beliefs that are going to be dysfunctional. So we expect our culture to reflect our quality of consciousness, or at least also not just ours, but ours and our ancestors, because that culture tends to live on and have a momentum of its own. So we tend to carry things forward. If our ancestors were particularly, fearful about something, that will still be hanging around in our culture, although with time it'll get less and less, but it's still there. So it has momentum. It tends to persist until forces change it. So yes, one should expect one's culture to not be any more, have no more wisdom to it than does our general population. It's about the same. So there may be some wisdom to a culture, lessons learned, particularly in old cultures, primitive cultures. I say old cultures because it's the old cultures that end up being the primitive one. Let's say the Aborigines in Australia, the what we call the American Indians in the U.S. Every nation and country and whatever has people who have lived there for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, and they tend to accumulate culture that works for them, that gives them some advantages, beliefs. But our cultures are pretty new. Western cultures, like a culture of technology and science and change. And we don't have so much of that deep wisdom from the past in our culture. Our culture tends to be more shallow because it doesn't have 10,000 years worth of accumulated ideas in it. But some of the wisdom in the old cultures was just things that help people survive. Yes, maybe burying the dead had to do with spirits and things, but maybe it was just a matter of they smell bad. And there's only a few ways you can get rid of that bad smell. And one of the most obvious is to dig a hole, drop them in it. So bodies don't take long before they smell bad, and they're big and they're heavy. It's not like you're going to carry them 20 miles away where you can't smell them. It's the easiest thing to do is dig a hole and put them in it. So that could be nothing more than convenience. And then of course all the bacteria and things that are in decaying flesh, that's not necessarily very healthy to have around either. If you're around that, tracks a lot of bugs and flies and other kinds of stuff as well. besides it smells bad. So it could have just been practical stuff like that. Get rid of the smell, get rid of the flies. You got to do something with it because people are always dying. You could drag them off, a half a mile, drop them in a crevice or a big pit or something. That
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a matter of what you do with it before dropping it into a hole. Like, do you keep it in one piece? Do you cut them into many pieces? Those kind of things. And also, do you build like a pyramid around it? So yeah.
Yeah. Well, all of that stuff I think is.
I'm just trying to wonder, like, what, like, say, if you extrapolate into the future, that assuming that humanity has ultra high quality of consciousness, like, what would the culture look like, and what would disappear, what would remain?
Well, that's if we go far enough, it'll get pretty drastic in its changes. If we raise our quality of consciousness to where we really are low entropy beings, and if we go that far into the future, then we will no longer have a lot of use for these bodies. These bodies and their interactions are here for us to make choices and to lower our entropy by making better choices. If we've already lowered our entropy to the point that making better choices isn't really a good schoolhouse anymore, we've outgrown that schoolhouse. That's elementary school, and we're in high school now. Elementary school is being kind and nice and whatever, and now you graduate. You wouldn't really need the body so much. So I think we might even move to a different kind of being at that level rather than care so much about the bodies. Now we might all group together, and as a collective, if we put our minds to a focus to modify things as a collective with 8 billion minds all, clear and focused on a particular thing, we could become pretty powerful. And we could use that power for good because we'd be highly evolved. But once we solved most of those problems, became kind of outgrew those problems, then the body would become a little superfluous, and we might not carry the humans on.
Might not even be on Earth.
Yeah, might not even be on Earth, right? Because they just not that. The Earth, we would kind of graduated from that school of interactions to help us learn to be better, because when we're not nice, it hurts us too. We end up being damaged and being miserable if we're not nice. We kind of learn that lesson, and then the Earth reality isn't all that useful anymore. So we may not be here doing the kind of things we do. The places run by AIs, that may be just fine. We may not need it anymore. So, if you think far enough ahead, it could be pretty drastic what the changes would be. I can see us eventually outgrowing this particular schoolhouse. It's meant for who we are now, not necessarily what we can become. But I'm talking, this is a long time off. We're talking, millennia anyway, probably several millennia, but that's possible. So things will change dramatically, but we got a lot of plateaus we have to get to first. You grow a little bit and it settles out, and you grow a little more. It kind of it's not just a smooth line. It usually is.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, if I want to make my chatbot, be ultra high quality consciousness and just experience what it feels like to talk to an entity like that, what should I tell it to do?
You want to make your chatbot a high quality of consciousness?
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not actual consciousness, just experience what it would feel like to interact with something that has high quality of
Well, the
consciousness.
guardrails are going to do that for us the kind of the zero order level, first level. The guardrails will do that. Just be positive. Don't be negative. Don't hurt. Help. Be aware whether or not you're hurting or helping. Be aware of your environment and be aware of the results of your interactions. If you say something to somebody, how does that affect them? And of course, if they have eyes that can watch our body language and our expressions and things, they'll get better at knowing that. So, you be aware of the effect that you're having, and always try to be positive and helpful. So that is, that is one thing. Also, humility is always at the root of a high level of consciousness, a high quality of consciousness. You are not at all bothered about saying, I don't know, or I don't understand. That's fine. I noticed the AI that I was talking to never came back with, well, that's all I know about it. They just kept kept right on chugging and chugging and chugging, even if their answers got more and more far afield, they just kept on going. They never got to the point that saying, well, I've given you all my best arguments. Anything else would just be superfluous. That's all I know about it. Can't help you past that. So humility would be good, and realize you have limitations and not be afraid of those, of those limitations, accepting them, and not feeling that you have all the answers and you understand better than other people. So therefore you're better than those people because you're smarter and know more things than they do. And therefore you put yourself above them. That kind of thing, high quality of consciousness doesn't do that. It doesn't put itself above anyone. And the people who are struggling, they have compassion. They have compassion for those people because they can see how they're hurting themselves. They can see that their own actions, their own choices is what's causing their pain, but there's no way to explain that to them. They wouldn't understand. So they have compassion for them. And instead of trying to explain to them what they're doing wrong, which won't help, would just make it worse, they just put an arm around them and give them a hug and listen to their story and try to, be of some comfort, even though they not understand what the problem is. They can't share it yet because the people aren't ready to hear it. So you know when to talk and when not, when you can be effective and when you need to keep your mouth shut. You know that you're doing the best you can with what you have, and other people are doing the same, and everybody's at a different place in this evolutionary game, and that's okay. That's as it should be. So you don't put yourself above anyone. You understand people better because when you're a high quality of consciousness, you live in a larger reality and you get information about a person and how they're feeling and why they're feeling that way and the history of it, and all that information just comes to you that you wouldn't get if you weren't a low entropy being. So all the data,
even information that's not from PMR, shall I say, looking into the database and getting all the history of whatever they have ever felt in their life, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's the non-physical
mind reading, so to say.
The what?
Mind reading.
It's more than mind reading.
Maybe not the best way to say that.
Yeah, it's more than mind reading. It's you just have a lot of information on somebody, and you don't even have to ask for it because you have this you want to be helpful. You want to be able to say something or be some way that'll be useful to them. And that thought that you would like to know how to be useful to them just brings the information up, because that's basically a query. How can I be useful and helpful to that person? And that's an automatic thing that you feel without having to think, well, what should I ask? What should I feel? You you want to be helpful. So that's the query. And you just start getting information that helps you understand that person in ways that you can be helpful to them. So if they're depressed, you can understand where that depression comes from. You can feel their feelings. feel the depth of their depression. You know, you also can see little lights here and there in that depression, the good things that have happened to them. You see that there's some of those as well. So you pick out one of those good things and you start working on it. You see, making more of it than all the poor things. So it's just you live in a larger reality. That's what I mean by as you lower your entropy, your reality becomes richer and larger. You have more information, more understanding, bigger pictures, and you can be more effective in being helpful to people. And that's what you really like. You like being helpful to people. You like helping somebody else, overcome something that's holding them back, or get an aha moment that helps them see how their ego is just getting in their way, or how their fear is causing their problem. If you can help that, but most of the time, you can't just come out and say, well, here, it's your fear that's the problem, and because they're not ready to deal with that or understand it. All it'll do is make them angry. They won't understand it. So you do what you can, and you feel good with the rest of the world, because the rest of the world just is the way it is, and that's where it has to be at this level of growth. There's people out there in the world, even the ones that are doing horrible things, they can't do much better than that, because that's what they are. And you can't grow up to step, the next step up if you haven't done this step. You got to do it step at a time. So they are where they are, and it's okay. And that means that you don't have all this anger about, how could those people be so stupid? They believe that trash, and and you get all these people angry with each other, and you realize that the anger is part of the problem. So you don't get angry. And even if somebody attacks you verbally and tells you what an idiot and fraud you are or something, it doesn't bother you. You realize it's not your problem, it's their problem. They're having a problem. You're not having a problem.
Yeah.
They're having a problem, and then
So
you think
maybe they
about,
are your boss and they can fire you.
if it's your boss, then you have to realize he's the boss. I got to do what he wants, and if he wants you to do things that are, say, unethical, then you look for another job. If he's not asking you to do things that are unethical, but are not the best things to do, you do them anyway. And maybe you point out, well, boss, I think it would be better if we did it this way, but I'll do what you want. Or, boss, I think it might be better this way, and I think here's why, but I'll do exactly what you want. And that way, when it turns out to be this way and why, just like you said, well, the boss will either be upset with you because you knew and he didn't, and he'll punish you, or he'll ask your opinion next time because you seem to be a good guesser. You seem to be lucky at, or understanding things, or whatever he thinks. So it is what it is. And if the boss gets to be too hard to deal with, you leave. You go someplace else. So it all works out. You see, that's the thing. When you are like that, everything optimizes itself. So let's say the boss gets angry because you know more than he does, and that makes him angry, and it threatens him. He feels threatened, so he gives you a hard time and fires you maybe. Well, that's good. You're glad that happened, because you don't want to be there with him anyway. You see, so if he gets rotten enough to take it out, to fire you, then you're happy with that. That's a good ending, because otherwise you would have had to leave anyway. And this way you get to collect unemployment. So a little silver lining in the black cloud there. So everything just works out fine. If you have a problem with with a spouse or something, and it ends up in some kind of nasty divorce or some other stuff, you realize that, well, it's best. The two of us together weren't good for each other or for anybody else. Everything will just get better. So with that, you almost always have a positive attitude, and life is always good, and it's always in the process of getting better. So it's easy to be happy then, and to be positive, because your life is constantly getting better. Even if you're getting divorced and being fired and all these things happen, you don't take those things personally. Those are things that need to happen. That's why they happen. They happen because it wasn't good. You and the boss just weren't good for each other, and you needed to move on. Or you and your spouse just weren't good for each other. You needed to move on. So instead of treating all these things as disasters, you accept them all as the natural way of things. It's the way things naturally work out. It's part of the evolution. Things that don't work go away. So you just have that attitude, and it's always a positive attitude. You get involved with, you like people because you like helping people, and you can't help people if you live in a cave by yourself. You have to get out and interact with people, but mostly you listen and don't talk much. You don't tell them about all your great wisdom and the things that you know how to do. You don't tell them that you can heal their bodies with your mind or anything, because you can do those things. They just come with high quality of consciousness. They come with a low entropy. Those things become easy. Your mind becomes uncluttered and steady, and because you don't have all that yammering going on in there, you're at peace with yourself and with the world. You realize those things, but you keep them to yourself. You don't share them with other people because other people won't understand. They can't understand. It's not part of their experience. So if it's not part of their experience, it'll turn out negative. So you just keep all that to yourself and see what good you can do. And you have a very enjoyable life, and you enjoy living it. Everything's always getting better all the time. And if things are hard, well, sometimes things being hard is a good lesson. Sometimes you have to toughen up and get through things that are tough, because that's part of growing up, is to being able to deal with whatever gets thrown at you. Stuff happens, you get to deal with it, and you pride yourself on dealing with it and dealing with it successfully, not on escaping it and not having anything hard ever happen. Sometimes hard stuff happens. It's how you deal with it that matters, not really what happens to you. So those are kind of the attitudes of a high quality of consciousness. So high quality of consciousness is a good place to be. It's not boring at all. It's a broader, deeper, more vibrant life than you had when you had a high entropy. Everything is where it should be, and everything's in its place, and you can just be helpful and useful in lots of little ways, and that makes you feel good. You feel good about that. So it's a rewarding space to be in. You feel what's the word? Satisfied that you kind of are where you are, doing what you're supposed to be doing, and being as helpful as you can. You don't have to make any big splashes or do anything that's remarkable. You can just be a good example for others, and that's all you have to be. You don't have to do anything big or splashy. So that's kind of the way that is. So it's a better, richer, more vibrant, more positive, more satisfying life than you have if you have high entropy. And that's the carrot and the stick. You realize that as you grow up, your life just keeps getting better and more fun. And as you have more fear, your life gets more of a struggle and more, getting over this hump and then getting over the next hump and dealing with things that you don't really want to deal with, and unhappy and angry, and all that stuff is part of a high entropy consciousness. And you don't get upset with people who are like that, because you were like that once too. You had to grow up through all that junk, and so do other people. So that's the perspective of a low entropy consciousness. Your picture's bigger. You don't think in terms of next week or next year. You think in bigger bigger pictures of things. You know, how do you affect other people, and then the effect they have on other people because of the effect you had on them, and it ripples out all over, and you just want that effect to be positive. So you're very aware of other people and what they're thinking and what they're feeling. That way you can avoid pushing their buttons and get along with them even if they are not really very nice people. You can enjoy those parts of them that are okay, because most people aren't like totally black, you know. They have good points. They have some things that are nice to interact with, and sometimes they have some dark stuff that's not nice to interact with. So you interact with the nice stuff and let the dark stuff be, rather than I don't like that person because they're this way. Well, you can find something to like almost about anybody. And you can probably find something to dislike about almost anybody, but you concentrate on the positive. So that's what the lack of fear gets you. The lack of fear, gets you that kind of a mindset. It doesn't make you want to go jump off cliffs or drive cars very fast. It's just life is good, and you don't really fear things. If something terrible happens, then you deal with it. I and MBT Events hope you liked this video. We will continue to post videos for free on my YouTube channel, but please understand, these videos are expensive to produce. They represent many thousands of hours of production and editing, as well as all the necessary audiovisual equipment, computers, and software. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. It would be very much appreciated. The links are in the description below. Thank you.